3 resounding tolls of bells echoed throughout the Hill family residence. This prompted a large number of key family members to swiftly gather at the meeting hall. The Hill family had a clear rule that if warning bells were sounded, it meant a major incident had occurred within the family. No matter where they were or what they were up to, they were required to head immediately to the meeting hall. Autumn, what the hell are you doing? Who permitted you to ring the bell? Spring had arrived with a few of his aides and strode into the meeting hall. He noticed that most of the key family members were already gathered. The family members were drawn to the meeting hall by the sound of the bell, not yet knowing what had transpired. Since the Hill family residence was enormous, surrounding an entire mountain, those residing behind the mountains didn't hear the commotion at the front gates. Autumn's expression was gloomy. Spring. Someone had gone on a killing rampage at our residence. If I hadn't rung the bell, our family's legacy would soon be reduced to ruins. Oh! Who has such courage to start trouble with our family? Spring was instantly agitated. It's that Dustin kid. Autumn gritted his teeth. That kid is audacious and arrogant. He openly disrespects our family just because he thinks he's got some skills. He not only injured 200 to 300 of our elite members, but he also crippled my son, Dustin. How could it be him? Spring furrowed his brows, slightly surprised. Are you sure you didn't get the wrong person? How would I get the wrong person? Even if that kid was burned to ashes, I would still recognize him. Autumn's expression was one of pure resentment. Everything must have a reason. Why would he do such a thing? Spring questioned. No reason could ever justify his heinous act. Autumn insisted indignantly. Spring, just look at my son. Look at how badly he was beaten up. He waved his hand, and soon, Torben was carried in carefully on a stretcher. He was covered in blood and had severed limbs, and his face was contorted in pain as he wailed incessantly. The horrifying sight caused an uproar among the family members. Torben was a direct descendant of the family. He was also someone the family nurtured with great care. Naturally, witnessing him reduced to such a battered state caused a significant commotion. Dustin has gone too far. We must make him pay for his actions. That's right. We must capture him so that it can serve as a warning to others. Everyone present spoke fervently with righteous indignation. Everyone, please quiet down. I have something to say. At that moment, Patrick walked up and said calmly, Uncle Spring, after investigating, I found that Torben was the one who started this fiasco. Spring raised his eyebrows. Oh, why? Dustin had asked someone to deliver a bottle of medicinal wine today to treat Grandpa's illness. However, things were intentionally made difficult for the person at the front gates. Not only did Torben smash the bottle, he almost killed him. That was why Dustin came to take revenge. Patrick explained the situation in detail. What? Is that true, Autumn? Spring turned his attention to Autumn. So what? He's just a servant. What's the big deal about beating him up? Is he worth being compared to my son? Autumn confidently justified his actions. A servant is indeed not worth mentioning. But what about Grandpa's medicinal wine? Patrick rebuked him. Torben is taking Grandpa's health as a joke. Don't you think that is disgraceful behavior? You cut the crap. Autumn's expression shifted slightly. Who knows if the medicinal wine was poisoned? My son might have stopped him because he had a good eye and realized the wine was tampered with. That is just your one-sided opinion, Patrick said impassively. Shut up. Autumn glared at him. Are you suspecting me? How dare you point fingers at someone with a higher standing than yours? Since he couldn't argue against him, Autumn pulled rank. But that made him more suspicious. Enough. Stop arguing. Spring slammed his hand on the table to stop their dispute. Autumn, I will investigate this matter thoroughly. Go and get Torben treated. Investigate what? My son has been battered to such a state. No matter what, I will get my revenge. Autumn spat out in anger. That's right. It doesn't matter why. The Hill family will not be bullied. At that moment, many of them agreed. On a normal day, no one would dare cause a scene with them, as they were usually the bullies. Even if they were in the wrong, it didn't matter to them. Whoever was the better fighter would be the superior party. What do you plan on doing? Spring narrowed his eyes, seemingly upset. I want to deploy the shadow guards and turn that kid into minced meat. Autumn was seething in anger. Nonsense. Spring shot up as he slammed the table. The shadow guards are the foundation of our family. How can you just mobilize them like that? I don't care. I'm getting revenge. If you don't agree, I'm asking father. Autumn was stubborn. Who's looking for me? At that moment, an elderly man with a white beard and white brows slowly walked out. His hands were behind his back, and he looked calm. Even though he didn't give off a powerful air, his every step and move exuded a subtle sense of authority. Sir Paul. Paul's appearance had everyone on their feet as they paid their respects. Even Autumn, who was defiant earlier, turned submissive. Paul sat confidently at the head of the table, his expression indifferent. Who said they wanted to deploy the shadow guards? Everyone else, including Spring, could only obediently stand and remain quiet. It's me, Dad. Autumn stepped out determinedly. And your reason? Paul picked up a cup of tea and took a sip, not even sparing him a glance. Someone crippled my son and injured at least 200 of our elites. A threat like that must be dealt with. Autumn complained with indignation. Paul responded calmly, so, what you mean to say is, your son was beaten up into a pulp because he's useless, and now you want the entire family to pay for your antics? What? Autumn was taken aback. He couldn't comprehend what Paul said. He never expected his father to respond that way. Dad, it's your grandson who was battered. Don't you feel bad for him? Autumn decided to use emotional persuasion. He deserved it for being a bad fighter. If he has the ability, get him to fight back himself. He's a weakling if he needs to hide behind the family's strength. Paul was expressionless. But don't try your nonsense with me. Autumn tried to explain but was stopped by Paul, who had raised a hand. The Hill family was built on martial arts. Prowess. Every generation has gone through battles and conquests. But your generation is pampered and weak. You have completely forgotten about our ancestral teachings and the dignity that comes with being a martial artist. Did you think martial artists were born into lavish feasts and beautiful women? A martial artist sweats, bleeds, fights valiantly, faces death and emerges victorious, and crawls out of piles of corpses and pools of blood. Look at you. How many of you have experienced near-death experiences? And how many of you have truly set foot on the battlefield? Today, even a young lad can mess around with all of you, and yet you have the audacity to complain to me. All of you are a bunch of useless trash. With his final insult, the entire room fell silent. Not only Autumn, but every Hill family member present broke out in cold sweats. They understood that Paul was furious not because they had caused trouble, but because of their incompetence. Today's incident will serve as a wake-up call for all of you. Paul stood up and dusted off his clothes. Autumn, bring your son to apologize to Dustin. That lad's future is bright, and he's not someone we should be enemies with. At the very least, he's not someone you bunch of losers can afford to offend. Dad. If you refuse, I will kick you out of the family. With that, Paul left without another word, leaving the remaining family members looking at each other in fear and regret.